That stomachs are probably rumbling, and I promise to keep it brief and to time so that I don't hold you back from getting your lunch. My name's Bryony Hughes, and I'm based in the Brighton and Sussex Medical School. In favour of aesthetics of my slides, I took out a couple of words and realised it's sort of given a slightly different meaning. I'm going to be talking about the challenges of teaching students in the UK about gender-based violence and conflict and disaster settings, not teaching gender-based violence and conflict settings. So before I begin, just to give a very brief introduction to who I am and why I'm talking about this topic. As I mentioned, I'm based at the medical school, and I'm a clinical lecturer in global health. And my main role is as course leader for our Masters in Global Health. The other side of me is my research interests. I'm at the start of my career, but the themes that are emerging that are of interest to me are the interface between gender, violence and health, and how those factors kind of play on vulnerabilities. And of relevance to today's theme, I spent last summer doing an internship at Harvard Humanitarian Initiative looking at a project of reintegrating former child soldiers in DRC. So, to focus on the MSc, the broad aims of the programme are to give students an understanding of the wider determinants of health, and also to facilitate them having the skills to critically analyse and debate topics around health and healthcare delivery, both in high and low income settings, so looking very locally but also kind of globally. And so gender-based violence in conflict is very rich and ripe for a context for discussion for students, raising lots of different questions. But as well as opportunities, there are many challenges, and so this is where I'm just going to focus on for the next couple of minutes. The first challenge is how to make this topic very real and accessible. While many of the students may have experience of working or living in an overseas context, it's rare for a student to come to a postgraduate course having worked or lived in an acute conflict or natural disaster. And so I have the challenge of how to bring this subject alive for the students when you're on a November afternoon on the Sussex campus. And so here kind of potential solutions for exploring are using videos and photography and ways to sort of bring things alive. Another thing that I find very valuable is drawing on qualitative research and work that has kind of captured the narratives and giving a voice to the people that have been affected and have experienced these scenarios, rather than it coming through my mouth, which is not very representative. The next challenge is how to introduce these complex contexts. You want students to have a very nuanced understanding of what the issues are, but taking DRC, for example, the conflict has gone on for 20 years, and to introduce all the different players and issues that have built up through that time is very difficult in the constraints of a 1 or 2 hour session. And the other thing that's quite complex is some of these issues around gender bring up very challenging concepts, and so it's necessary to sort of think about your starting point and take students on a journey that is feasible within the time available. And here, the kind of using very specific examples where you give a short vignette and gives focused questions enables people to kind of weigh into something that they can then take and explore in more depth in their own time. Now, this third point is what I feel to be the biggest challenge with this topic. The gender-based violence that takes place in conflict settings is incomprehensible, and it's very difficult to process the emotional response when you read and see and hear about what atrocities take place. And while you want students to not be sort of shielded from that reality, you've also got to be very mindful that for some this may be the first time that they've kind of looked into it in depth, and to allow the space to process that shock, and not to be disabled by it, so to still have a possibility of having a language to talk about it and look into the issue without feeling totally impotent and hopeless by the enormity of the issue. Which very much links to my next point of such a key part of adult learning is that students actively engage and are able to talk about issues, and so making the subject very possible for them to do that and giving them a way to explore that. And then finally, just building on this idea of kind of hopelessness and dissociation, war is atrocious and horrific, but to find kind of examples of constructive action and to give a sort of a balanced view so that by the end of the session, students are enabled to sort of feel that they are empowered to take their interest or their emotions forward. So this may be signposting to UK-based campaigns or to further resources where they can build depth into what they understand. Okay. So one of the aims of these snapshots is to sort of facilitate us talking to each other, and so these are just some further questions for thinking about. What are your experiences of teaching violence, conflict and disaster, and what have you found works well and is effective in engaging students in the topic? And then finally, a shameless plug for the MSc. You can find out more at this web link. Thank you and enjoy your lunch.